Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Sanjay Goel, CEO and founder at NachoNacho. NachoNacho is a B2B SaaS marketplace powered by fintech. Sanjay, I'm so excited to chat with you, not only because you have an extensive background in the startup space, building companies, investing in companies, and really just having an insight into, I think, what makes companies successful and scalable and all that. And also what you're working on at NachoNacho in terms of connecting a lot of these SaaS companies with their customers and finding unique ways to help them not only expand their reach and their audience, but also helping companies purchase the right products and really kind of manage that overall procurement process. But before we get into all that, what were you doing before you started NachoNacho?
Hey, Julian, great to be with you today. So I'm a third-time founder. And other than that, I've had quite an extensive career in banking. So I was in New York and London doing banking, derivative structured products in global financial markets. And before that, I was an engineer. I was doing VLSI design, designing memory chips and microprocessors. And also I worked in Japan doing robotics research in a large Japanese company. So I've had a few careers.
Yeah. And just thinking about your startup and startup experience, I know you've not only gone through some acquisitions yourself, but you've invested in companies. And I'm just curious for the audience to kind of get some context. When you think about investment, you think about startups, what are the components that makes a startup successful? What do they have? Whether it's product market fit or tight operation, if they're bootstrapped, what in particular have you seen for companies that feel will have long-term success? What are those kind of features that they have?
Yeah, no, I think so. It comes down to two basics, right? So coming down to basics is idea and execution. So idea includes a vision, like what market are you going after? How big is the vision?
Yeah.
Are you going to make a substantial impact in the universe? And secondly, do you have the tools to do it?
Yeah.
Which is really your team, your experience, and all of those things. So it's really down to the basics.
Yeah. And when companies say don't have a component of it, or I guess backtracking, what are some common ways that companies, they are underprepared to scale or underprepared in terms of the market we're serving or don't have that product market fit? Are there some kind of common themes that you see for companies that are successful in ways that they can actually improve to reach success? Anything come to mind?
Well, I think so. One of the key qualifications of a founder, I think about two qualifications. One is you have to be at least partially delusional. You have to be able to believe that you can build something out of nothing, which is pretty scary in itself.
Yeah.
And secondly, you need to have the grit to be able to do it. And to be able to build something out of nothing, to have very little resources and be able to do a lot with that. So to be able to do a lot with very little, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't think you can read about it. You can read about it, learn from a book. I don't think you can learn about it in a classroom.
Yeah.
It just comes from life experiences.
Yeah. And thinking about just jumping into your entrepreneurial journey, I know a few startups ago, but just curious because I feel like a lot of founders have similar, whether it's personality traits or similar qualities about them. What was the initial move into startups and entrepreneurship in your mind? You were doing investment banking. Before that, you were an engineer building hardware and other technical products. What kind of itch did you need to scratch? Did you see a problem in the world that you needed to solve? Was it a certain product? What were the circumstances that inspired you to take on the journey and then continue on for however many years and however many startups?
Yeah, so I think my starting point is not necessarily that I want to do a startup. I want to build a company. That is not my starting point.
Yeah.
I only build a company when an idea comes to me. So some founders start with the notion that they want to be a founder and then they go looking for an idea. I don't do that. I work backwards. I let the idea come to me and I only start a company if that happens. So I'm not forcing it to become a founder. I don't think there's any glamour in being a founder. As everybody knows, who's been a founder, it's a very, very tough journey.
Yeah.
And it's not about the money. It's not about being the boss. None of those things. It's really about getting inspired by an idea and then taking it to reality, making it real. So that's really what the journey is about.
Yeah.
And that starts with identifying or coming across, I should say, a need that exists in the market. I always start with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when thinking about the needs that are out there, is there a certain market you gravitate towards, or are you pretty much open to seeing, I guess what's behind your decision making in what you're addressing in your market? Is it based on a certain expertise? For other founders out there who have a similar philosophy, what gets you excited? What would essentially qualify for you to spend that much time on it? And like you said, go through the difficult journey of entrepreneur.
Yeah. So personally, I look for very wide and very wide spaces. So both criteria have to be met. It needs to be a very wide space, meaning I don't want to be a me too. I want to create that space, and it has to be a very large opportunity, or at least it should have the potential to be a very large opportunity.
Yeah.
Something that can have a large scale impact on something, the world, on society, on commerce, on business, on people's lives. It has to be substantially impactful for me to be involved.
Yeah. Well, and thinking about if it is a wide space, I feel like the first thing I think about is driving adoption and driving education, getting people to acknowledge that there is space or there is a need out there. What are some strategies that you found are successful for that education piece and getting people to see almost the elephant in the room that you've come to find?
Yeah, it's not easy at all, especially if you're going after a wide space. If it was obvious, somebody else would have already done it. So by definition, you're going after something that is less obvious.
Yeah.
So I think for that, what you need is allies. You need people who already have seen a similar need, and then they become your allies, and hopefully they have their own following and influence.
Yeah.
And so you create these concentric circles of very close allies who truly get what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then it spreads outwards from there. And then over time, as you start realizing a vision, more and more people start seeing it. And at some point people say, of course that needs to be done. I mean, there's no question about it, right?
Right. Yeah. And thinking about the successful companies that you've had, and whether successful or not is the right word, but the companies you say have gone through transitions, and a lot of founders measure success on, say, acquisitions. And I know you've gone through one or two or even more yourself. When you're evaluating an acquisition as a founder, how do you know who the right acquirer is? What are some of the criteria you've seen? Because having the right partner, creating the right ecosystem of how that transition is going to be, whether it's an acqui-hire, completely absorbing the company, how do you identify the right acquirer based on your business or your team? What are the criteria for you to kind of go through a transaction like that? And would you do it differently from your past experiences?
Yeah, so I think, normally founders, when they create a company, they're emotionally very tied to it, to their vision. And if you're talking about an exit in the form of an acquisition, then I would think that they would want to see if that acquiring company will be able to carry on that vision and perpetuate that vision further with more resources. That's what I would look for.
Yeah.
If I were looking to be acquired. But personally, when I think about building a company, I don't think about an exit at all. I think about the day-to-day joy I get from building the company, from building the team, bringing in investors who are your partners into the company, talking to customers, identifying needs, developing the product further. So that's what gives me the joy. It's not thinking about who can I sell the company to.
Right. And thinking about NachoNacho and what particularly excited you about the problem set that you discovered in the marketplace, and give a little context to for the audience, like what does NachoNacho do? Who are you addressing, and what were you inspired about the problems that you're essentially solving now and tackling and within the SaaS space?
Sure. So is now, depending on who you ask, a $600 billion per year industry, and growing at 20% per year. So it's like software was eating the world. Now SaaS is eating the world. So software has become SaaS.
Yeah.
And there were a few pioneers, early days, companies like Adobe, who migrated from shrink wrapper to SaaS. Salesforce came along. Those were the early days of online recurring payment-based models, which have proven to be obviously very successful, both from a customer perspective as well as the provider perspective.
Yeah.
But what I realized is that nobody has built a true marketplace for SaaS so far. So think about, for example, the consumer goods space. So we have Amazon.com, which is actually more of a marketplace than an e-commerce company.
Right.
We have Etsy and eBay, they're complete marketplaces.
Right.
Then you have Uber, which is a marketplace. Airbnb is a marketplace. So we have all these marketplaces for various goods and services that we look for, where there is a direct relationship between the marketplace and the buyer and the seller.
Yeah.
So in Uber, the seller is a driver, the buyer is a passenger. Airbnb, the seller is the host, the buyer is the guest, and so on and so forth. And nobody has built a marketplace for SaaS, a true marketplace where you have deep and direct and ongoing relationships on both sides.
Yeah.
And I realized there's a desperate need for that because the cost of user acquisition for SaaS vendors is high and going up because of increased competition. And you don't need to spend all that money on Google ads and Facebook ads and building these giant sales and marketing machines, which are extremely costly. If you have a marketplace, you can be a lot more efficient in being able to get your product to all the right customers. And from a customer perspective, the reason we like marketplaces is because it's the one place. So I go to Uber because all the drivers are already there.
Yeah.
I go to Airbnb because all the hosts are already there. I go to Amazon because there are hundreds of thousands of vendors listing their products in NachoNacho in Amazon. So there's clear value from a buyer perspective, from a convenience perspective. But more than that, there is from a unit economics perspective, there is a huge advantage that marketplaces bring to the whole system.
Yeah.
And the advantage is that is network effects. So that is the core of what we do is network effects. Basically, once you have a critical mass of buyers and sellers, they reinforce each other. The more buyers you have, the more sellers are there. The more sellers are there, the more buyers are there. So for example, we have, a customer that is subscribing to 40 SaaS products. And through our recommendation engine, they discover the 41st SaaS product in a marketplace. So our incremental cost for finding that match between the buyer and seller is literally zero, is the incremental cost. Whereas for that seller to go and find that buyer that we already have, it would have cost them 30, 40, 50, 60% of their LCV to be able to find that buyer. So the network effects and the efficiencies created by marketplaces are unbeatable, which is why all the other marketplaces exist.
Yeah.
It's just that nobody had built it for SaaS. And the reason I believe nobody's built it is because it's really, really hard to build. And I am the type of person who only likes doing hard things. If it's easy, I get bored. So I like to do hard things. And this has been, we have actually passed the hardest point, but building the marketplace in the early stages was very, very difficult. But we are way past that now. We're in the scale up phase. So what we do is we do three things for businesses on the buyer side. We firstly have businesses manage all the SaaS subscriptions that they already have, that they're already paying. By the time we meet any business, obviously they already have many, many subscriptions. The problem is that their subscriptions are out of control. So free trials become paid. You have unused subscriptions. You have duplicate subscriptions sometimes. Sometimes vendors overcharge you. You get surprise charges. Sometimes cancellation is difficult. Subscription is easy. Cancellation is difficult. Employees leave. They leave orphan subscriptions behind that nobody knows how to cancel, all these problems. So that's the first problem we solve. The way we solve it is by issuing virtual credit cards. So we're also a fintech company. And the main idea is that you have a separate credit card per vendor. So if you have, let's say you're a 20 people company and you have 45 subscriptions, you'll have 45 credit cards. And you can create a new card within 5 seconds. And on each card, you can put a dollar limit. You can set your expiry date. You can cancel the card at any time. So you have very granular control over every subscription that you have. And you have a dashboard where you can see all your subscriptions in one place in real time. And you can run any kind of reports by date, by vendor, by employee, by category, anything you want. So that's the first thing we do. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking in terms of, I'd love for you to finish, but the fascinating piece is the issuing of the virtual credit card per subscription that you have. And how are you able to do that outside of, say, traditional means of getting access to a credit card, like going through credit checks and going through all the underwriting that is required to actually have and own a credit card? What are some ways that you've worked around it? It's pretty unique to the space, especially within old financial structure.
It's a good point. So we think of ourselves not as a lender, but as a software company. So the idea is not to actually set up credit lines for you to evaluate the financial profile of your company. You can actually get started within literally less than 5 minutes in NachoNacho. We don't have any relationship with credit agencies. It's plug and play. And the reason is that we're not really extending a credit line to you, even though we are issuing credit cards. But normally we are pay-as-you-go models. Every time you use our card, we will draw the same funds from your bank account. So the idea is not to actually give you a loan or give you float for some time period. The idea really is a software provider to give you control over all your subscriptions that you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously building that whole infrastructure and you're right, is obviously takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Because we have to have a relationship with the network like Visa. There's a bank behind it. There is a processor behind it. So it's quite a complex architecture to be able to build that.
Yeah.
And from a user perspective, it's extremely simple. You can literally onboard in 2, 3, 4 minutes, start issuing cards, 5 seconds per card.
Yeah.
The second thing we do then is we help you discover new SaaS that's relevant to you using AI. We've been using AI before this whole thing became hyped up with ChatGPT. And the idea is to help you discover products that are specifically relevant to your company based on private data we have on you, because we know what you're already paying for. And also based on publicly available data on your company, as well as publicly available data on the vendor side. So we're the matchmaker, and we take all these signals and put it into our machine, AI machine. And what comes out is specific recommendations for you as a company. And most tech companies are always buying new products. We, on average, subscribe to one new product every week, at least one every week, because we're always trying new things on the back-end side, on the IT side, middleware side, growth hacking side, design. We're always trying new products. So gives us a way to control all of that in one place.
Yeah.
So that's the second value prop, is helping you discover new products that may be relevant to you.
Yeah.
Just like Amazon offers you recommendations, because you buy so much from them that they will say, you're buying all these products, Julian, so you may be interested in these 3 as well, because other people like you are buying these products, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have the marketplace, where we have more than 400 SaaS products already listed. Every product in the marketplace comes with a discount. The total discounts available in the marketplace are close to $2 million per year already. And we're listing more and more products every day. So almost any product you can think of will most likely be on a marketplace. And if you buy it from a marketplace, you will get very substantial discounts.
Yeah.
So really, it's a one-stop shop for managing, discovering, and buying all your SaaS.
Yeah. And thinking about the recommendation engine, going back to that idea, and you're talking about, you take a few different signals and then identify and use that recommendation, but is the recommendation based on price, or is it based on, is there any input on the company side to identify what's important to me? Maybe I don't care about price, but I care if I'm looking up CRMs, for instance, that it plugs into a different API like Zapier, and then you can have all the sophisticated work. How do you identify the right signals to recommend the right products?
Totally, yeah. So many things go into it. So first of all, we have a what we call a product graph, where we match every single product in the world, every single SaaS product. We have a graph where we have basically pairings. Is product A complementary to product B, for example? Maybe because they have direct integration. Maybe because one product helps you do whatever you're using the other product for, maybe do it better.
Yeah.
So those are complementary products. The other type of pairing would be competing products.
Yeah.
So you have product A, and then you have B, C, D who compete with A. And then one may be cheaper than the other, one may be better than the other, but they're competing products. So we have all these relationships between products in the product graph.
Yeah.
And then we add to that, obviously, what other companies are buying. If you're buying the same 10 products as another company is buying, but they also have an 11th product, that product may be interesting for you, for example.
Right. Right.
So there are many, many signals like that go into it. And we also take input from the sellers, because we have on the other side, sellers are also our partners. SaaS vendors are our partners, and they can also set their ICP in their seller account. They can say, I'm targeting, for example, companies size 1 to 100. I'm targeting companies in North America and Europe, for example.
Yeah.
I'm targeting ed tech and educational companies, and I'm targeting government institutions, and I'm targeting, manufacturers. So all that input, those are also signals we take from the sellers, and that becomes part of our matchmaking as well.
Yeah. And thinking about just how it affects, if I'm a SaaS product, how it affects pricing, right? We enter into this marketplace, we identify ICP, and then we're in this pool of competition to reach this customer. Obviously, there's ways that you facilitate that relationship so that they can step product. But what does that mean in terms of the large, landscape of pricing and figuring out customers and what they actually care to pay for, but also how they care to pay for it? Are you seeing sellers collect that data and make changes in that structure in their business model based on the feedback they're receiving from the marketplace?
Over time, yes. So
Yeah.
the whole idea is to harmonize the whole subscription economy, right?
Yeah.
Right now, it's kind of a free for all. Every vendor has to go and acquire their own customers. Pricing is all over the place. Pricing is opaque as well. Many vendors don't list their pricing, and then you have to talk to an AE and then negotiate pricing with them, all of that. So it's all over the place right now. On the buyer side, they have their own problems. Cancellation may be difficult. You don't know what other people are paying. The price is not published. So you're always concerned, maybe I could have gotten a better deal. I have unused subscriptions. So on both sides, there is dysfunctionality. So the goal is to create a much more harmonized ecosystem for SaaS, where good actors are rewarded and the bad actors are over time removed from the system.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about the traction of NachoNacho. How many sellers, how many vendors, how many buyers have you had on the platform to this point? And then also, what's the next step? What's the next stage in the growth in terms of what you're willing and excited to offer in the next few years? What's been exciting up to this point, and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so on the buyer side, we have more than 25,000 businesses signed up so far. 3 years since we have launched. On the seller side, I have more than 400 SaaS vendors listed so far. And we're targeting 5 million businesses on the buyer side. We're targeting maybe 100,000 SaaS vendors on the seller side. So we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
But what we already have is by far the largest marketplace, SaaS marketplace that's out there.
Yeah.
Where are we heading? So creating more and more value for all stakeholders. We also have a community called Mastermind that you can access from NachoNacho.com, where we basically is the connective tissue between all stakeholders, between buyers, between sellers, between thought leaders, investors. They all come together, and it's a public community where you can share your opinions and thoughts on SaaS.
Yeah.
On the buyer side, creating more and more value for our customers by offering them incremental products, whether they're on the fintechs or whether they're on helping them grow in different ways, helping them connect with the right providers of services and products.
Yeah.
On the seller side, obviously acquiring more and more sellers, getting them listed, becoming a major source of revenue and customers for them, to the point where we should get to a point where if you're really good at making a product, you don't need to know how to sell it.
Yeah.
Just list it on NachoNacho and we bring you all the right customers. Amazon does that for consumer products.
Right.
So many manufacturers of consumer products, their probably only channel is Amazon. So they just list their product on Amazon. They have to pay Amazon whatever, 10, 15, 20% of their revenue, but then they don't have to worry about distribution at all. So Amazon does all the distribution.
Right.
So that we see that as a potential outcome of our marketplace.
Yeah. And thinking both externally and internally, what are some of the biggest risks that NachoNacho faces today?
I would say the biggest risk is on the fintech side. Fraud is prevalent, and unfortunately in this world we live in. And that's something we monitor very, very carefully. And we have lots and lots of triggers that help us avoid fraud.
Yeah.
But something we always have to stay ahead of potential bad actors.
Yeah. And if everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for NachoNacho?
So long-term vision is to become the central hub for SaaS. We should be, if anybody thinks about SaaS, whether as a buyer or a seller or as an investor or as a thought leader, they should think about NachoNacho. We should be able to provide for all the needs of all stakeholders in the SaaS world.
Yeah. I always like this next question. I call it my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and we'll see where we get. First question for you, just to open it up. What's particularly hard about your job?
My job, the hardest part is stopping work. I enjoy work way too much, and I find it hard to stop working. I'm working and whenever I get time, like even I flew back today from Vegas. I was in a fintech conference. I kept working even when they told me to shut the computer down. I was still trying to sneak in a few more things to do.
Yeah.
Got home. I was working in the taxi, work late at night, all of that. So I just enjoy a lot what we're building, and it's very, very exciting. So that's the hardest job.
Yeah. What's really popular nowadays is identifying the procurement process and being super efficient as companies have to be a little bit more bootstrapped. VC funding is not what it used to be, just because I think there was a lot of bets being made that maybe didn't pan out, or overall it's just we have a strapped market. But procurement is been extremely more popularized, especially now because companies are really having to manage their spend. How have you seen the value increase in the procurement side for companies, for buyers on your platform? And have you seen any behavioral changes of companies bringing on new products or changing products? Anything that you've seen kind of through the marketplace in the last 3 to 4 years that you've been around?
Yeah, absolutely. So more and more customers signing up, users is going up and usage is going up as well, because not everybody was originally using us for all their SaaS, but as more and more they got used to it, they're using us more and more.
Yeah.
And they also, our biggest channel actually, believe it or not, even now is word of mouth.
Yeah.
Word of mouth and partnerships are two of our biggest channels.
Yeah.
And we create so much value for users for almost for free. The price is almost nothing, that people want to tell other people about it.
Yeah.
And then our partners are also very, very excited about working with us. So they promote us as well. And many of them have very significant reach. So we have partners like Zendesk and Deal and GitHub and SAP Concur.
Yeah.
And they promote us to their own audiences.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So thinking about also, you touched on it a second ago about price, and we were talking about how a lot of pricing models it's just a wild, wild west out there. They're different. Maybe they are, it's very opaque. You have to go through channels to actually get a price or conversations versus just having a menu of sorts. Have you seen pricing changed, or is there a common pricing structure that you've seen, and has that changed in the last few years?
I would say that as competition has increased, I've seen SaaS vendors becoming more flexible with spending money on either channels, like we are a channel for them.
Yeah.
So they're willing to give away more of the revenue to us as a channel.
Yeah.
And also be willing to give more discounts to their end customer as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason is that margins in SaaS are so high that even after all of that, they're left with very, very thick margins.
Yeah. It definitely is the benefit of distributing things online is the cost to operate is becoming increasingly less expensive, with microservices especially becoming a huge game changer for a lot of companies to be able to decrease that spend. But thinking about just a two-sided marketplace that as an organism or even as a machine, how do you essentially gain traction in both sides of the marketplace? If I'm a founder, I am a founder that runs the West Side marketplace, but for my other founders out there who do the same, how do you not only prioritize which side of the market to grow, but understand how to grow either side as fundamentally they have different incentives? What are your strategies around that?
Yeah, so I think it took us quite a while to actually figure out which is the harder side. There's always one side that is harder than the other.
Yep.
So in Uber, for example, drivers are the harder side. In Airbnb, the hosts are the harder side. So whichever is the harder side is where you would put more emphasis. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is to make sure that you're creating value consistently on both sides. That's really, really important because we have to be very careful about that. So for example, we are often offered money even to give special treatment to some SaaS vendors.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't accept that right now.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that every SaaS vendor is getting a fair treatment in a marketplace.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things we have to keep in mind.
Yeah. More on a personal level, what's something that you tend to find yourself spending a lot of time on that you would like to spend less on, and something that you spend less time on that you would like to allocate more to?
I think you'll have to set up another podcast just to cover all that question. So I have way too many interests outside of my main interest, which is building companies, but I fly helicopters, I fly airplanes, I've been skiing. We have a ski house in Tahoe, so I've been going there this winter, which has been amazing. Yeah, I rock climb and ice climb. I do mountaineering, high altitude mountaineering as well. Scuba dives. I recently went to Costa Rica, took a lot of surfing lessons, and a few other, I sail, I race sailboats.
Yeah.
So a few other interests like that as well.
I love that. It sounds like that you refuels a lot of the passion. Honestly, it kind of justifies the amount of time you allocate towards work. It kind of really probably feeds that engine and rejuvenates you a lot, which I think a lot of early founders learn later in their career on the importance of having those different interests, being so invested into their project and the success of their company. Just for in reflection on your career, is what in particular for other founders out there is something that you're good at now that you weren't, or that you wish you were better at earlier on in your career?
Well, I would say I'm still not good at many, many things. Things I would like to be better at is leadership.
Yeah.
So I'm an operator more than a leader. And so my style of management and our general style of management in our company is basically self-management.
Yeah.
So we don't have any managerial roles at all.
Yeah.
Everybody does their own things. I have my own tasks. I have my own deliverables, and so does everybody else. So that's not my style. But at some point, you need to become a manager as the company grows. And that's something still I'm in the process of learning how to do.
Yeah.
Whereas, so that's, it's a different skill set than being an operator and being able to produce on your own.
Yeah.
To be able to get the best out of others is a different skill set, and it's learning. It's work in progress for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to ask this question because the next question, I love how founders extract knowledge from anything they ingest. So whether it was early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
Oh yeah, so many people. Well, the one book that I read, 0 to 1, so was very, not, I would say very influential, but it was definitely thought-provoking because it was very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And I've lived in many countries, I've had many careers, so I've been exposed to a lot of knowledge and information.
Yeah.
So that book was different, and it's a very contrarian view to conventional views.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like to hear contrarian views because there's always a risk of groupthink, right? Everybody starts thinking the same way. You don't even realize that you're thinking about things the same way.
Yeah.
We just are.
Yeah.
Until somebody brings a totally different view. And then that's very powerful when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Along the way, most the leaders, I was very impressed with Jack. I'm forgetting his last name, from GE. I think he's passed away now, but he was one of the most charismatic leaders, like one of the great leaders of corporate world.
Yeah.
And there have been many, many other ones.
Yeah.
And they all have their strengths and weaknesses, right? Not everybody's strong at every aspect. So Elon Musk is a great leader in some ways, in many ways, not so in other ways. Bezos has his own strengths and all of them. So you can basically pick and choose the virtues of each one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we're coming to the close of the episode, and I want to make sure that there's nothing left on the table there before you give us your plugs and let us know where we can support. But is there any question that I didn't ask you that I should have, or that you would have liked to answer? Anything that we missed that you want to share with the audience?
I think you did a pretty good job in covering all the questions I would have wanted you to ask me.
Cool. I love that, Sanjay. And last little bit is I love to give our guests a chance to give us your plugs. Where can we find you, as a founder? Where can we find NachoNacho? Give us your websites, your LinkedIn, your Twitters. Where can we not only be a supporter of you, but also a customer and start getting into the product and the platform?
Yeah, so we're very easy to find. We're just NachoNacho.com. And from there, you can find our LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find all our channels there in our footer. So everything will go from NachoNacho.com. And if anybody needs to sign up, if they need any kind of hand-holding, any onboarding, we're all of us are completely available anytime, including myself.
Amazing. And last question. Why NachoNacho? Where did the name come from?
So we actually started out as a B2C company. Originally we were planning on building a B2C SaaS subscription marketplace, for Netflix and Hulu and all of those things. So we wanted a name that is funky and memorable. So we've thought about, for example, Yahoo is a household name.
Yeah.
GoDaddy is a household name. All these are really weird, funky names, but they really stick. So we wanted something like that. And then we pivoted to B2B. And I said, we will just figure out a more kind of corporate name at some point and just keep this as a placeholder. But since the last 3 years, now the name is stuck and people actually really like it and it really stands out in the B2B world. So we're just decided we're just going to go with it. It turns out that NachoNacho in Hindi, which is one of the few languages that I speak, means dance as well.
Oh, I love that. I love the sorry, say that again.
It means bailamos.
Bailamos.
In Spanish, you would say bailamos.
Yeah.
So it's an invocation. Yeah.
I love the story behind it. I obviously I saw it and I was like, I gotta ask. And so memorable. And the first thing it reminded me of Nacho Libre, if you've ever seen the movie with Jack Black. So corny, so silly. But yeah, it's my immediate association. But anyway, Sanjay, it's been such a pleasure not only learning about your background and experience, but how you view two-sided marketplaces, how you view kind of this whole SaaS model and connecting not only buyers and sellers, but also really understanding and identifying not only pricing and all the changes that can be made through a marketplace that's provided by that ecosystem. I hope you enjoyed yourself on the show today, and thank you so much for being a guest today.
Yeah, it was great fun. Thanks for your time as well.
Of course.